Hey family, Reverend Russ back again with another 5-minute pivot or less. Super excited to be with you all and to have a moment to share from a 5-minute pivot. Don't forget to go on to ministrypivot.com for all information on Ministry Pivot and everything that we're doing there. Wanted to bring up a short message, a short piece from our very last full-length pivot, Ministry Pivot podcast last year, where we ended with Bishop Walter Thomas. Still hearing a bunch of reflections from that. Super excited about that. If you haven't watched that, I'll put it in the bottom link here. But let's watch a clip of what Bishop shared.
One is, the last thing I said, because I don't want to forget it, whatever you do in the moment, understand you send a message to the future.
That's good. Okay.
If, for example, you bring people into your facility,
Yeah.
and you have a large crowd,
Yeah.
it may look good and you may feel good and you may enjoy it. They'll shout, fall out, and whatever, or have good service.
Yeah.
And you'll stand there and evaluate and say, this is really good. People are coming back.
Yeah.
But you're sending a message to the future also, to everyone who's home watching, because they're not ready to come back.
Yeah.
And that's saying to them, oh, it's not time to come back.
Wow.
They are not socially distancing.
Yeah.
They are not wearing masks.
So I hope that you understand. I hope that you saw some. Now, Bishop could have went on longer inside that moment, but he did so much inside the pivot. But one of the things that I want to pull out and I want you to understand is he said, and he spoke about things that we do now is speaking to the future. Things that we do now speak to the future of what we want, to the future of what we want. And for some of us, if we're doing the wrong things, to what we don't want. And so he talked about the worship experience. So how we're streaming now, how we're engaging now speaks to how people will engage us later. I also think how we deal with our leadership culture now is also something that how we treat our leaders, how we engage people around us, how we engage those who serve with us will also speak to our future, will also speak to what we're going to do. And then last but not least, how we deal with our teaching. I know now video is a context, right? So how video is a tool now in context. And so how we deal with those, I think that is also something for us to reflect on and think about. But let's leave the church world alone. You also have to know that what you do now also speaks to the future. The habits you set. How did you start this new year? Are you reading more? Are you praying more? The relationships you have, the people that you have around you, how are they sowing into your future? How are they sowing into what God has for you? And how are you sowing into them? The way you start now, the way you do things now will really be able to reap in the future. And so I really want to encourage you in this 5-minute pivot to understand what Bishop is saying, and even to dive in more and think about the things that you're doing now speak to the future that you want, or speak to the future that you do not want. And so you have to be very mindful. You have to be very careful about what you do now. You should be very prayerful about what you do now. And then I will even add this. You should be evaluating what you do now. Do you go through the month and then have a scorecard? I'm very competition focused. Y'all pray for me. But do you look at your month and say, okay, how many things did I really accomplish versus how many things I wanted to accomplish, so that you can see where you're going? Because there's no way to focus on the future as outside of focusing on, of course, God's guiding and God's leading, but focusing on what God has given you today, focusing on what God has allowed you to do now. Because Bishop Thomas is super right when he says that what you do now speaks to your future. What you do now, it speaks to what will happen in your future. So hopefully that was helpful for you all. Hopefully you'll be able to take some of those nuggets. I'll have another pivot coming up. We're going to talk about a book that I really found insightful called, I believe it's Moments, Powerful Moments. We'll talk about it later. But looking forward to seeing you back on Ministry Pivot. Looking forward to seeing you as we get geared up for our first Ministry Pivot podcast of the year. Can't wait for you to hear this one, and super excited for all that God is doing. Have a great day. Have a great week. And remember that this is your season of opportunity.